If you'd met him on that first night, you would have crossed the road. A ragged shadow with eyes like burnt amber, ribs tallying the days the world forgot his name. He didn't have one yet, just a limp, a notch in his ear, and a habit of slipping out of the light. But every city keeps a secret, somewhere between the noise and the neon, where a life can change. This is the story of the street dog who found his light. The city woke in layers. Hawkers warming their voices, buses coughing into life, a boy yanking a makeshift cart across a sleeping road. In the gutters, paper dreams swirled like slow birds. The dog wandered through the choreography no one rehearsed, unnoticed but part of it all, like a comma in a sentence too long. He had favorite places. The fish woman's stall where scales fell like stars on wet wood. The mechanic's yard, a shelter during rain, though the men there threw bolts, not kindness. And the narrow alley by the movie kiosk where the night guard hid bread heels under the counter. He called it the bread moon, because that's what it looked like in his mouth, a crescent of relief. On his left hind leg, an old injury made every step whisper. He walked with the careful dignity of someone who has memorized pain and chosen to continue anyway. He had no light, not really, just the memory of warmth he could not name. On a Tuesday that smelled like rain and frying plantains, the dog slunk near a school fence. Children versus noon sun, caps, chatter, 100 moving shoes. One shoe stopped. A small human crouched, quiet as a held breath. She didn't reach. She didn't squeal. She just looked. Her name was Amara. In her hands, a tiny lantern keychain, plastic, gold paint worn off, glass scuffed. It clicked when she pressed it, a stingy blue beam, more toy than torch. Amara didn't try to feed him. Streets had taught both of them. Trust is a rope you pull slowly. She simply placed the lantern on the ground, clicked it on, and nudged it forward. Light sliding over concrete like a shy apology. The dog watched. Light in a city that seldom saved any for him. He crept closer, sniffed the little sun, and lay down with his chin beside it. That was all. A treaty signed in silence. Amara's teacher called her. She stood, tapped the lantern off, and whispered, "See you later, Shadow." Then she ran. A name. He didn't know it was a name, but the sound tucked itself behind his ribs, where old hunger lived. Hunger is a clock that never keeps time. Some days it rang like a siren. Others it forgot him until it was too late. That night, clouds stood at the horizon like judges, and wind chased rappers across the road. The city zipped itself tight against storm. Shadow slipped into the mechanic yard. The men were gone. The air smelled of oil and rain. He curled under a truck and tried to become smaller than thunder. The storm arrived like a drumline. Rain came slanted and loud. Lightning stitched the sky with crooked thread. Under the truck, Shadow shook with the metal. He dreamed of warmth, not a picture, just a temperature. He dreamed of a den that wasn't a place but a promise. You are safe here. Sometimes dreams are postcards from the future. Sometimes they're just tricks the brain plays to keep a body moving. When the water on the ground crept too high, Shadow crawled out and ran, his limp suddenly a paddle. The city became river. A floating plastic cup tapped his leg like a friend trying to keep up. At the corner by the movie kiosk, a small shape moved through rain like a stubborn star. Amara soaked, her uniform clinging, the toy lantern held against her chest to shield it from the water. Her mother would scold her later, but she had a mission stamped into her feet. She knelt by the kiosk, set the lantern under the counter, clicked it on, and placed a small tin bowl beside it. Bread moons, 2 of them. She looked around. Shadow? He didn't go to people in storms, but light is persuasive. It cuts a path where none exists. He followed it. They ate together. The bread gone fast, the storm forgetting them for a minute. Amara pressed a hand to the concrete, fingers splayed, letting water pool in her palm. Shadow lapped, eyes blinking slow. She didn't reach for his head. Not yet. Trust is rope. You pull slowly. Street life writes rules in invisible ink. Food is territory and territory has teeth. A bigger dog watched from across the lane. Scarred muzzle, heavy shoulders, a swagger that announced he had paid for his survival and expected change back. The vendors called him Sarkin, which in some old tongue meant chief. He was not cruel. He was the neighborhood's law. Sarkin approached, posture tall. Shadow lowered himself, chin to ground, showing throat, letting history speak. I am not here to challenge. The bread moons were gone, but the tin bowl still held rain. Sarkin sniffed, drank, then flicked his eyes at Shadow, a measuring, and at Amara, a warning. Amara's heart tilted fast. She lifted the lantern. Tiny light, ridiculous against the storm, but she raised it like a shield. Something changed in Sarkin's gaze. Not fear, recognition. Once long ago, he had followed a boy with a flashlight to a dry porch. Once, a gentle hand had brushed mud from his ears. Once, he had slept to the sound of someone humming beyond a thin door. The memory arrived like a smell on the wind. He stepped back. Sarkin turned, marking the alley with a casual scuff, and walked away. Power can be a growl. Sometimes it is restraint. Shadow watched him go and learned something. Light is not only for seeing, it is also for being seen. In the days that followed, Shadow became a rumor at the edges of kindness. The fishwoman began leaving fins wrapped in paper. The kiosk guard looked the other way when he slept by the generator's warm cough. A tailor tossed thread spools for him to chase. Little games that let afternoons slip. Amara and Shadow built a routine. At dismissal, she'd sneak to the alley. Some days she brought a heel of bread, other days just herself and the lantern. She'd set the light between them, practicing quiet like it was an instrument. Shadow learned her sounds. The sighs she made when homework waited, the soft tisk of worry when her mother's cough was bad, the three-note hum of a tune she liked from the radio. One afternoon, Amara placed a new thing by the lantern, a rope collar, braided from old-school ribbons and brown twine. No metal, no buckle, just a loop that said, maybe someday. She didn't try to put it on him. He rested a paw on it while he napped. Ownership is a strange word. Sometimes it just means we belong to this moment together. The test came quietly, as many do. A man in a bright vest arrived at the market carrying a clipboard and impatience. He worked for someone who had never walked these streets. He counted dogs like they were potholes, things to be filled or closed. He called to Shadow, making the kind of kissy noises people use when they want to trick an animal into trust. Shadow stayed near the kiosk, eyes on Amara's lantern, ribs rising slow. Sarkin watched from a rooftop like a stone saint. The man set a cage door open, tossed meat inside, and backed away. Hunger is a clock with its own hands. Shadow stood. He could smell the fat, the salt, the slick lie of it. He looked at the lantern. He looked at Amara's ribbon collar. He looked at the cage, its mouth pretending to be generous. He did not move. The man grew bored. Another day, he muttered, snapping the cage shut hard enough to startle pigeons. That evening, Amara came with a frown shaped like a question. Shadow bumped her knee with his head, the smallest nudge, an answer in motion. Amara smiled without showing teeth. She'd learned his language. Good, she whispered. You stayed. Sometimes the bravest thing a creature can do is refuse an easy trap. One night, cut thin by a new moon, Shadow walked farther than he usually did. The city changed here. Fewer shops, more doors, and beyond them stories he did not know. A boy ran past, barefoot, clutching a plastic bag that clinked with stolen bottles. Behind him, shouts. A pickup truck engine revved. The boy vaulted a low wall, slipped, skinned his knee, and rolled into the street, right as the truck's headlights found him. The driver's palm hit the horn. Time tore like paper. Shadow moved without thought. Pain is a teacher. It taught him trajectories. He launched, body a question against math, and struck the boy's shoulder, enough to knock him sideways into the gutter's safety. The truck screamed by, wind kicking dirt into Shadow's eyes. On the curb, the boy stared at the dog, then began to laugh, the shaky kind that comes after almost. Crazy animal, he said, not unkindly. His hand hovered, then dropped. He ran, slower now, the night swallowing him in one careful gulp. Shadow stood breathing against the horn's echo. Somewhere behind a door, a woman whispered a prayer with no name in it. Heroism, like hunger, rarely arrives on time. No one saw him, but some ledger balanced a little. Morning came late and hard. The market yawned open. The kiosk guard yawned wider. Amara did not come. Shadow waited by the alley. He watched the school fence, the road, the corner where she usually appeared. Noon made a pile of heat. The lantern did not click. The rope collar lay like a halo in the dust. He circled, nose to ground, walking the pattern of her absence until it became a map. Smell of detergent, a faint thread of cough syrup, the metallic ghost of coins. He followed it through alleys that tasted like rust and rain memory, to a doorway with green paint chipped into islands. Inside, a narrow corridor, a courtyarded sky, a thin woman with tired eyes. She stood in the doorway and met the dog's stare with one of her own, measuring, weary, not unkind. "What do you want, eh?" she asked, as if he could answer. A small voice coughed from within. "Mama, who is it?" The woman hesitated, then stepped aside. "Come quick, before the landlord sees your friend." Shadow slipped in, head low. The air smelled of boiled herbs and stubbornness. On a mattress, Amara lay with a fever's red crown. She smiled when she saw him, tried to sit, failed. "Shadow," she breathed. He'd never been inside her world. It hummed with a quiet he didn't know how to place. He crept closer. The rope collar lay on a crate by the bed, newly washed. The toy lantern sat beside it, battery dying, casting weak commas of light on the wall. Amara's mother watched the dog watching her daughter. Then her face softened into the version reserved for remembering who you were before rent and worry made you efficient. "You again," she said to the dog. "Okay then." She placed a bowl of water on the floor. "Drink," she said, like a blessing. He did. For 3 days, Shadow came and went like a tide. He brought nothing but presents. Sometimes that is enough. On the second day, Sarkin appeared at the courtyard entrance, sat like a statue, and listened to the coughing. He left a chicken bone near the gate. Not for the girl, for Shadow, a small tax of solidarity. On the third day, the fever blinked first. When Amara laughed again, thin but true, the room brightened in a way unrelated to the parade of lanterns. News travels on feet and bowls and the spaces between people who share the same weather. By week's end, the market decided to be generous. Not in money, in ritual. The fish woman cut a ribbon of smoked mackerel and announced, "For the dog who waits." The tailor hung a strip of kente cloth on the kiosk hook. "For style," he said, winking. The movie man set his speaker to play old love songs, the kind that pretend the city is kinder than it is. Even the mechanic, grumbling, said, "That dog is good luck," and kicked a bent hubcap toward the alley, a shiny moon to bat. Amara, stronger now, brought new batteries for the tiny lantern. She turned it on, and the beam no longer trembled. She tied the braided collar, not around Shadow's neck yet, but on a low post by the kiosk, a promise tree that said, "When you're ready." At dusk, the children from the school arrived one by one, each carrying some small light. Keychain torches, jar lanterns with phone flashlights inside, even a candle taped into a cup. They made a circle in the alley, giggling at first, then quieting as light pooled like water. Amara spoke to them the way children do when entrusted with a seriousness adults can't hear. "He's our friend," she said. "He doesn't like sudden moves. Don't try to grab him. Just sit." So they sat. 20 little lantern fires, faces glowing, hands steady. Shadow approached slow, a comet deciding whether to join a constellation. He lay in the circle's center. For the first time in his street life, light didn't point him out as a problem. It gathered him in as a reason. Sarkin watched from the alley mouth. He didn't join. Chiefs don't always attend festivals. They authorize them by looking away. Children's whispers, small clicks of switches, a soft chorus of night insects. The choice by the time the Harmattan winds brushed the city's edges with cool chalk. Shadow had a decision to make. Amara's mother had spoken to the vet who visited the market on Saturdays. "We can do it slowly," the vet had said. "No cages, no rushing, a checkup, a bath. Then, if he wants, a home." The word home is a house that only exists when someone opens the door. That Saturday, as the sun tilted west, Amara stood by the kiosk. The rope collar lay open in her hands. The toy lantern hung from her wrist, glowing like a personal sun. Shadow approached, slow as trust. He sniffed the collar, ribbons washed and smelling faintly of palm soap and warm hands. He placed his head under the loop. Amara's breath hitched, fear of scaring the moment away. She slid the collar over his ears, and it settled on his neck like something ancient finding its rightful place. Nothing dramatic happened. Bells did not ring. The market did not stop. Even the generator kept complaining. But a small cheer rose in the children's throats, and the fish woman wiped her eyes with the corner of her wrapper, pretending it was sweat. The vet crouched, palms shown openly. Shadow accepted the touch, then leaned, just a fraction, into the hand. To suffer and still lean toward kindness. This is a kind of genius. The light he found later, there would be a bath that smelled like answers, a blanket that kept its promises, and a corner of a room where dreams could be believed without negotiation. He would still visit the market. Friends don't vanish when you stop sleeping outdoors, and Sarkin would nod like a colleague meeting another on a day off. The toy lantern would hang by the door, and sometimes when the power went out, it would be the only light in the room. But on that first evening, Shadow, no longer only a shadow, walked beside a girl through streets that had once only echoed him. People glanced and smiled like they remembered something they hadn't realized they'd forgotten. He didn't know the word for it, but he knew the feeling. A warmth with a shape, a circle that let him in. Some call it love, some call it home. He thought of it as light, not the kind that chases the dark away, but the kind that teaches the dark how to hold you without swallowing your name. He had always belonged to the city. Now, at last, the city belonged a little to him. What do you think about this incredible journey? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to see more uplifting stories like this, be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. You can also suggest other topics related to animal welfare that you'd like to explore. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.